I Might Just Get Lost. An original short story by Jared I. McGee. Mr. Tom knew everything there was to know about Jeffersonville. He'd lived there since he was 6. He loved to regale what few visitors came about with stories of the mighty Mississippi and how it used to feed the sprawling sugar plantation that had once been the envy of its neighbors for miles and miles around. What exciting days those must have been. Since he knew its history, and he did know all about Jeffersonville, you see, he could go on with the tale, recounting the plantation's abandonment in the face of a changing South, the establishment of the Louisiana Convalescent Home that operated under several different names in its lifetime as well. Louisiana Convalescent Home, U.S. Naval Hospital No. 776, Gilbert Longman Hansen's Disease Center, just plain old Jeffersonville, and now? Though his knowledge in the past was firm, his sight into the future was limited. The fat cats up north in Baton Rouge had planned to shut this place down, and Mr. Tom just couldn't imagine it. He lived here since he was 5, and that made for a very long 80-year tenure at the sometimes hospital, sometimes prison. He couldn't even remember his family anymore. In the beginning, he'd have flashes of his mother stroking him, telling him that he would feel better soon. But after the men took him away in shackles to a longboat ride, his memories of the before time seemed like yesterday evening's dream. Just a faded fancy that was just beyond grasp. Until he lost his first toe, Mr. Tom didn't realize that he really was sick. He would jump and play, run and sing, garden in the patches reserved for him, build chicken coops in different funny shapes, even if he was the only one doing any of it. Everyone else was just so old compared to him. They set about grumping and grumbling and generally not having any fun at all. But then, yeah, he did lose that little pinky toe on his right foot, there on his 7th birthday. And, man oh man, did he start to understand that he was indeed sick. As he aged, his extremities continued to distort and flake away. Like his memories, his body seemed to be some fading, cracked thing that couldn't handle the present. Mr. Tom understood why the older residents were a bit grumpy at times. Then more doctors came. New doctors came with new medicines. They poked him with needles and scraped his rough skin into little round glass jars. They said that this was to help make him better. With more injections came less pain and fewer mornings where Mr. Tom would wake up with some piece of himself staying in bed when he chose to get up. All that was ancient history now, though. His body was a bit rugged, and he certainly continued to hurt, but this new world in which he lived, this modern age of medical miracles and political correctness, meant that people at least made a good solid try at treating him like a regular man. The niceness only extended so far. Jeffersonville had been part prison, part leprosy ward for a very long time. In these last few years, they received fewer and fewer white-collar criminals, and it had been decades since they had last seen any new patients. Almost all of the residents had been encouraged to leave off tending the Jeffersonville History Museum and move into a state-run group assistance home, leaving just Mr. Tom and 5 other residents to maintain the entire grounds, building, and museum by themselves. This was just another move to try to discourage the residents from staying there. The state had bigger, better plans for Jeffersonville, and Mr. Tom and his ragtag family were making Louisiana delay those plans. Some fancy lady from New York City came to see him just to talk about all that. Mr. Tom told the nice lady everything there was to know about Jeffersonville. He made sure she knew he had lived there since he was 6. He regaled her with stories of the mighty Mississippi and how it used to feed the sprawling sugar plantation. He pushed on past the plantation days, recounting the plantation's abandonment in the face of a changing South, the establishment of the Louisiana Convalescent Home, and the changing of its names. He told her of the prison program that was put in place to help the patients of the home take care of the grounds. He told her now those fat cats up in Baton Rouge wanted to force him from his only home and his only family. She asked him the oddest questions. Would he like to leave if he was offered a trip? Well, no, of course. It was quite scary to leave. People always stared. Would he not like to see New York, where she was from? Well, no, of course. Too many people in such a big place sounded like somewhere Mr. Tom could get lost far too easily. Had he ever been out of Louisiana? Well, no, of course, unless you count a day trip to Centerville, Mississippi when he was younger. He got to pick up some special groceries with the warden and even got to see a parade that day. Will you stay here until they force you out? I plan on dying here, ma'am. I ain't got nowhere else to go. What if you do die here? Well, I done picked out my place to rest, ma'am. Lone Oak Cemetery is where the rest of my family is buried, and I plan on being near 'em. I plan on being under the biggest tree out there, which ain't that oak, though. I plan on being set to rest under that there pecan tree. I always did love pecan pie, and that's my spot from when I was just a child. I'd sit there and stare up at the clouds for hours and hours. When the lady left, she left Mr. Tom 2 presents. A nice New York City scarf that was the softest thing he'd ever felt, and her card. He didn't have the heart to tell her he didn't know his letters and numbers, but he smiled and accepted that gift from her too. She was a nice lady. As Mr. Tom laid in his threadbare bed, thinking about all the things he'd experienced over the course of his 80 years here at his home, he couldn't help to think back on that nice lady asking him if he'd ever want to go anywhere other than Jeffersonville. The only place he thought was worthwhile to see other than Jeffersonville was maybe Jackson, since Johnny Cash sang about it and all. Then a thought came to him. If he could choose anywhere, he would go up into the sky like the comics used to talk about. Be on a ship up in the heavens, exploring the skies that he would watch clouds dancing about during his younger days and try to count the stars in during his younger nights. Mr. Tom kicked his covers off and wandered out to Lone Oak, out to his pecan tree. He greeted his lost friends and loved ones as he made his way to a spot under the tree, and he looked up. He marveled at just how many stars there were. Up there, in all those things of beauty, he thought even a man that looked like him would be beautiful too. No one trying to push him out of his home, no one staring at him because of his broken body. He wrapped his new scarf around him, along with the history of Jeffersonville and whether those men and women who explored the stars in all those stories were brave or just seeing a better home than this one on Earth. God, he missed his mother. Almost faded to oblivion or not. And that's where they found Mr. Tom, all wrapped up in his scarf. He died peacefully that night under his favorite tree, looking out into the infinite night sky and wondering what it might be like to sail free out there among all those stars. Thank you for listening to I Might Just Get Lost, an original short story by Jared I. McGee. The backing tracks for I Might Just Get Lost were taken from freesound.org, an amazing community based on sharing that enhances a great many projects. These particular tracks are provided by several different Freesound contributors. Just Kid Inc. provided the slide guitar blues riffs. Ben Boncan contributed the steel guitar sounds. Lucas Gons supplied the mandolin track, and that Jeff Carter is responsible for the Amazing Grace Beatitudes. All of these sounds are being used under a Creative Commons Attribution Share-alike License 3.0. Thank you to these artists, as well as freesound.org, for their contributions. As always, keep your eyes peeled for the next short story from Jared I. McGee.